Slavery, a civil relationship in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. The slave trade refers to the Atlantic trading patterns which were established in the mid-17th century. Trading ships would set sail from Europe to the west coast of Africa with a cargo of manufactured goods such as cotton, brass bands, and firearms. There these goods would be traded for slaves. Once the ship's cargo was full of slaves, it set sail once again for America and the Caribbean along the Middle Passage. Conditions on board ship during the Middle Passage were horrific. The men were packed together below deck and were secured by leg irons. The space was so cramped they were forced to crouch or lie down. Women and children were kept in separate quarters, sometimes on deck, allowing them limited freedom of movement. This also exposed them to violence and sexual abuse from the crew. The air in the hold was foul and putrid. Seasickness was common and the heat was oppressive. The lack of sanitation and suffocating conditions meant there was a constant threat of disease. Epidemics of fever, dysentery, and smallpox were frequent. Captives endured these conditions for about 3 weeks, sometimes longer. In good weather, the captives were brought on deck in mid-morning and forced to exercise. They were fed twice a day, and those refusing to eat were force-fed. Those who died were thrown overboard. The combination of disease, inadequate food, rebellion, and punishment took a heavy toll on slaves and crew alike. Surviving records suggest that until the 1750s, 1 in 5 Africans on board ship died. Auctions were horrific. When the ship docked, the slaves would be taken off the ship and placed in a pen. They would be washed and their skin would be covered in grease to make them look healthy. Gunpowder would cover the whip marks, and if they had diarrhea, they would stick rope up their anuses. This was done so they would fetch as much money as possible. In July 1833, a bill to abolish slavery throughout the British Empire was passed. Here are the main reasons why. The slaves rebelled. For example, in Haiti, they liberated the island and abolished slavery. The revolt shocked the government and made them see the costs and dangers of keeping slavery in the West Indies. The plantation owners set them free to save money. The plantation owners set their slaves free to avoid paying for accommodation and food, and then asked to employ them for a cheaper amount of money. Abolition groups and religious groups that demand freedom for all slaves, like the Society for the Abolition of Slavery. Olude Equiano was born in Nigeria in 1745. He was kidnapped when he was 11 with his sister and was held captive for 6 months. Then he was taken across the Middle Passage. He was owned by Captain Henry Pascal, a British naval officer, then Captain James Doran, then a merchant called Robert King. He learned to read and write when he was a slave. He was taught by his first master's relatives. With his last master, he was able to buy his freedom by purchasing and selling merchandise. He helped with the abolition of slavery by speaking in meetings in Parliament about his life as a slave. He also published his own autobiography about being a slave, and it was a bestseller. In my opinion, the British Empire was horrific and unhuman, but it shaped the world we live in today and set some boundaries down, so it never happens again.